Hello everybody. Today I will be talking about coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef. I've covered this topic once before previously in high school, but today I would like to revisit it because there have been new efforts in the reef's recovery. To start off my presentation, I would like to look at the structure of coral and how it functions. Coral is a colony-based system comprised of many small parts called polyps, and these polyps function with a symbiotic relationship with small algae. This algae, or the coral, starts with many species of this algae, and then it begins to sift through them as it begins to grow older, and then it gets down to one, which it chooses to live with for the rest of its life. The coral feeds off of the simple sugars that this algae produces as a byproduct from photosynthesis. Coral in an ecosystem is a fundamental building block. Many small prey fish feed on it, and it provides shelter for many species of animals. To get into coral bleaching, we start with the 2015-16 bleaching event. This affected the very far north and south portions of the Great Barrier Reef, where they saw ocean temperatures 2 degrees Celsius higher than ever recorded before, at its worst point in February of 2016. This hot water temperature causes the algae that the coral works with to become extremely basic, and this is part of why it's called bleaching. The basicness of the algae causes the coral to turn white, as well as damaging its tissue, and in some species of coral it actually goes through a process called pulse inflation, where the coral grows in size and in an effort to get rid of the thing that's hurting it, expels the algae. And this was actually seen for the first time in the Great Barrier Reef back during this event while the scientists were doing research, and they did not know that coral could use this process to get rid of algae. They thought that it was only used to get rid of excess sand that the coral had accumulated. To really understand the scope and vastness of this single bleaching event, we look at Terry Hughes' work and photos. He did photographed over 12,000 reefs on 90 hours of flights, with over 200 reefs having 80% bleaching, and that equates to about 50% of the reef being unable to come back or recover at all. In the grand scheme of all of his work, he guessed that 800 square kilometers had about 50% of irrecoverable coral, and that was from the far north tip of the Great Barrier Reef to about Papua New Guinea. This matters so much because coral takes 10 to 15 years to recover, if it is able to recover, and then even the coral that is in the recovery process still has to worry about diseases and infections that can kill it in a matter of days. If coral ceases to exist, we may lose many plants and animals that use it as a base. And it has social impacts in many places having to do with tourism, so much so that in Australia, when these events were going on, that there were even bleaching deniers, business owners saying that coral bleaching was fake in an attempt to keep people coming to their snorkel places, or however they used the reef to attract people. But the really exciting part of this presentation, to me at least, is the new efforts that people have been making to try to fix this problem. So the first one I'm going to talk about is having to do with the natural way that coral can adapt to temperature, and that's with subtle increases and decreases, and then it's more resistant to heat as time goes on. It's called flux resistance. But in an effort to try to make this stronger in coral, they're looking at trying to give new algae to the corals that is genetically modified, a genetically modified version of a different type of coral algae from the Indian Ocean where temperatures are much higher, similar to that or even higher of the bleaching event. And then the second way that they're trying to re-stimulate growth in the coral is with nurseries, where they take small new coral and just grow it underwater in the temperature so it is already climatized to the temperature, and then it can grow and sustain itself from there. And it's been working, but that's not a very long-term solution because there's not really enough space to get back the coral they need. So the most interesting way to me that they have been trying is with something called a race tank, which runs new algae or genetically modified algae through existing corals that are damaged and in need of help, and they can do almost any size. They just need a bigger tank, and they run new algae through it, and then it revitalizes the coral. I like to think of it as almost a coral recharger. But yeah, that's my presentation on coral bleaching. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys.